Welcome back to another episode of KB Sports Beyond Question, and today we're going to be covering the adjustments in the NFL offseason. We're going to start off with Kirk Cousins signed to a 3-year, $84 million deal with the Vikings. You look at what Kirk Cousins has did in his 6 seasons with the Redskins, really, nothing that stands off on the paper. Never really had talent in Washington.
Yeah.
Jordan Reed, Morris. But I think in the Viking system, he'll actually succeed.
Yeah, with, what's his name? Stephon Diggs, Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah.
Those are
Dalvin Cook.
Dalvin Cook.
I definitely could see with what the Vikings did this year with Case Keenum too. I think that they could definitely win the division. With the addition of Kirk Cousins. But I've always looked at Kirk Cousins. He's stood out on the paper. He's had solid stats, but he never really provided in Washington.
Yeah.
But I think that's because he really wasn't surrounded by talent. They never really had a great defense, a great offense, and he never really had a weapon.
Yeah.
So I think definitely with Dalvin Cook now, I think Kirk Cousins is going to stand out.
Yeah, and again with the Redskins, they made it to the playoffs a couple of times.
Yep.
But they would always get booted out in either the first
Wild card, yeah.
Yeah, the wild card of the first round. So it's obviously Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback.
Yeah.
And he's going to add a lot to the Vikings, but like you said, never had a weapon in Washington, and that's where Vikings with Stephon Diggs, Kyle Rudolph, those two players play a part.
Yeah, the 6 years that Kirk Cousins played, in the past 3 years, they've only won, a 500 team, 24, 23, and a tie. I don't see a lot from the Redskins. I think that franchise is just going to fall after the trade with Alex Smith.
Yeah.
So, moving on, one of the bigger signings, I'd say, Jordy Nelson. Packers released him. A lot of Packers fans are, pretty salty. Yeah, pretty salty, I would say, with the releasing of Jordy Nelson.
Yeah, but he spent 9 years with them, and he was good for the first, I would say, 6 years.
Yeah.
And then he tore his ACL in the preseason.
That's the thing.
And he just tanked after that, and he tried to make a comeback, never did really anything after that. But in return for Jordy Nelson, Jimmy Graham. They got Jimmy Graham, which, looking back on both of their careers, both of them have basically identical careers. Jordy Nelson and Jimmy Graham both have 69 receiving touchdowns. Jordy Nelson has just 6 less receptions, and he does have 1,000 more yards, but again, he's a wide receiver.
I would say with Jordy Nelson, the fact that the Packers got rid of him, I would say it's good. It was time for a change. A guy who's getting older, 32 years old. He just looked a lot slower this year. You saw him with Brett Hundley. He strives with Aaron Rodgers, but I think a guy who Jordy Nelson, wanted some money.
Yeah.
I think it's good for the Packers to move on. Slower guy, like you said, that ACL, I think it changed the game.
And it'll allow another wide receiver, Devontae Adams. It'll allow him to progress and step up his game, because last year he had a standout year. He was our number one option basically the entire year, as you saw with Brett Hundley and Aaron Rodgers. And Jordy Nelson was just basically should have been just sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah.
This is how he performed.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say Jordy Nelson's turned into a mediocre wide receiver.
Yeah.
I think he strived with Aaron Rodgers. They had a really good chemistry and connection.
Yeah.
But I think Jimmy Graham's better for this team. Jimmy Graham, a guy who's a year younger. I think he's a better red zone target.
Yeah.
I just look at Jimmy Graham as a guy coming to Green Bay.
An X factor.
Exactly. He can compete. He competed on the Saints and Seahawks. I think he loves to compete. Jordy Nelson, I think now that he's going to the Raiders, I don't know. I really don't think he's going to produce.
He's going to be
in Oakland.
subpar, but then that's this year he didn't have many catches, and he didn't have any targets from Brett Hundley. But with Derek Carr, an elite quarterback, I don't know if he'll either stay the same or do better. We don't know.
Staying with the Raiders, they also got another signing, Doug Martin, a guy who's been on and off. Doug Martin's one of those guys where he had a good year and then had 2 bad years.
Yeah.
He had another good year, 2 bad years. 2012, he had 11 touchdown rushing season. I look at Doug Martin as a guy
streaky.
He's very, very streaky. A guy who's got suspended, injured. What do you think about Doug Martin? What do you think he's going to do?
Throughout his career, he has scored. He has 26 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
But he's very explosive. If he gets hot and he can make people miss in the open field, he'll be able to run all over you.
Yeah.
But again, if they have a good defense, the other team, he's not going to do very good. It's basically if you're against a bad team, obviously he'll do good, but that's it.
I'd say Doug Martin's one of the guys who's going to get a lot of carries, but the average yardage for Doug Martin, only 4 yards throughout his career. I don't think that stands off the paper. I'd say Doug Martin, with him, he's getting older, and he just really hasn't done anything in his career that's stood out. Took a team to the playoffs. Doug Martin's been an MVP candidate. No, you haven't heard that. But I think he is a guy who can bring a little pop, off being either a second option. I don't know what's going to happen with Marshawn Lynch now.
Yeah.
I think the Raiders have a lot to figure out.
Moving on, Tyrann Mathieu.
Yeah.
What do you think about him?
I would say a great addition. I think Tyrann Mathieu took a little bit of a pay cut this year, actually, only $7 million, to go to the Texans.
Yeah.
And the fact that he can finally compete. A team with Jadeveon Clowney, J.J. Watt. You look on the offensive side. Deshaun Watson only played 7 games this year. I think the Texans could for sure be a contender in a weak division.
Even like you said with the offense, they have a powerful offense with Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, their running back. I forget who that was. Alfred Blue, I want to say.
Yeah.
And Lamar Miller.
Yeah.
They're on. They have a great offense now because of Deshaun Watson just coming in, but he did tear his ACL, so we don't know how he's going to be this year. But their defense is already stacked. One of the best defense in the league, like you said, Jadeveon Clowney, J.J. Watt.
Yeah.
They also have Carl Joseph. They have.
Well, the thing is for the Texans is the offense. I think the offense did produce, and I think we've seen the defense produce 2 years ago, one of the best defenses in the NFL. So I think Tyrann Mathieu, a big hitter, I think it's a great addition.
Yeah, he's very explosive, can change the game at any moment. 11 interceptions throughout his career. I think he's only played 5 years, so he's very young and athletic.
He's a big hitter. I think he's going to have more fun being on a more competitive team.
Yeah.
Staying in the AFC, Cleveland Browns, the Cleveland Browns. They got Tyrod Taylor, Demarius Randall, Carlos Hyde, and they still have the 1 in 4 pick.
I think that they're going to be. This is a stretch. They're making the playoffs this year. Don't quote me. They're going to make the playoffs this year. They have Carlos Hyde as the running back. They have the number 1 in 4 pick. Who do you think they're going to pick the number 1?
I mean, Saquon Barkley's so tempting. He's so tempting. But when I saw them got Carlos Hyde, do they need another running back now? Because I think that's just going to cause more problems, bringing in another guy in Saquon.
I think that what the Browns should do is draft a quarterback, either in Sam Darnold or Josh Allen or whoever, and have Tyrod Taylor. I mean, obviously he's not the greatest quarterback to mentor a rookie, but he has experience. He knows what he's talking about. He definitely can add to the rookie, whoever they would draft, his mental IQ for football.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think Tyrod Taylor is a franchise quarterback for the Browns. I think he'll play 1 year, 2 years at most. But I think you're right. I think they could bring in a young guy at 1 or 4. I know they want Josh Allen from Wyoming. If they were to do that, they could definitely get some mentorship out of Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
And I think defensively, the Browns were about 15th, middle of the pack last year. They're a good defensive team.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with you on the playoffs. I think it's a stretch this year. Just the fact that it's going to take time, chemistry, get it glued together. And this team just has such a bad reputation.
Yeah.
But I would not be surprised if they traded one of those picks. I don't know if they want to trade back. I could definitely see number 4. But I still think they're going to take Saquon Barkley. I think it's too much to pass up on. This is a guy who could be, potentially the next Barry Sanders. That's what he looks like right now.
Yeah.
So for the Browns, I'd say 8-8 season.
Yeah.
I'd go 8-8 season.
And with our last topic, out of these players that we have talked about, who do you think is going to be the most impactful?
I would look at Kirk Cousins. You know why?
Yeah.
Because what the Vikings did this year with Case Keenum.
Case Keenum,
a guy who, played for the Rams, barely even got to play behind Nick Foles.
Yeah.
I think what the Vikings did this year with Case Keenum, I think Kirk Cousins is an upgrade, actually. I look at their offense. Like I said, Dalvin Cook, Stephon Diggs, like you said, Kyle Rudolph. I think they have a solid offensive line. They did lose Jerick McKinnon, a faster guy, but I think the Vikings could definitely win the division, 11-5. I would not be surprised to see the Vikings back in the NFC Championship.
Yeah, I agree with you with Kirk Cousins, but I do think Jimmy Graham is going to be an X factor for the Packers.
Yeah.
Because they have had Richard Rodgers and Martellus Bennett last year, but they never really had a beast at a tight end since Jermichael Finley.
I would say
back in the day,
they'd never have someone as big as a red zone threat. Jimmy Graham's a red zone threat, a guy who's going to run routes.
I think 6'7", 250.
Big guy. Yeah.
He's a big guy, great hands, can do a buttload of stuff in the red zone.
So wrapping up this video, thank you for tuning in to another episode of KB Sports Beyond Question. Comment below who you think is the biggest impact one of these players.
Make sure you like and subscribe.
Thank you so much for staying to the end of this video. Big shout out to our sponsor, KK Photography, for giving us the studio, the backdrop, and the t-shirts. If you are an up-and-coming high school senior, make sure to get your senior pictures at KK Photography. Say that KB Sports Beyond Question sent you to get 10% off.